majority of information that you to some of these developers, well, that's the real problem. And to the extent that the journalism falls on more, it will happen inevitably. Even if the companies don't want to do it, they go like this. Blizzard has done things with me. That's bad. And cyber information, be able to shine residue. You have to get those defenders, less knowledge, less sources being corrupted, which means the information we're getting is also potentially at risk. That's a problem. We can try to do our best to have journalistic integrity, or the idea of journalistic integrity, I don't know how that works, but we'll try to do our due diligence at the exact same time. There's going to be some situations in which we're going to be misinformed because these companies are controlling the narrative. That's definitely true, and everybody can always be misinformed. I think the problem is like everybody makes mistakes. I've made mistakes. These made mistakes, everybody's made mistakes. The problem isn't really making mistakes. The problem is not trying to correct them. Everybody will make mistakes. The other big scoop is that Paul says he's talking about how people's algorithm is actively hostile towards these brands. He's not wrong, by the way. This problem is getting worse, and it's not because of AI, it's because of audio. It's because Google pushes too many sponsored search results over search results that are. It's also just AI and these websites in general, because if you guys have searched for anything lately on YouTube or searched for anything lately on Google, you'll notice that you're getting very curated results very quickly. And one of those things is just that I haven't even had to easily just like type it in. Hey, how do I get this one thing or this item effective, whatever it is? I'll just straight up tells me without me ever having to look at it with me in the first place. I don't think that talks about it, like if listen, you put that information out there, then of course people are going to be able to do that. That's not Google being bad, that's Google being good. And I don't really care about like, oh, that's not good for the website. Like, I don't care about the website. Trying to spread websites and these websites that they exist, and if the websites don't exist, then Google information to be YouTube is everything. YouTube is great. A full app. It's just for streaming YouTube. And YouTube great. It's way once it continues with, well, this is the latest navigator back in 2022 became more definitely used as creators as applications. And they also said that the escapists created her and gave result in there some name sites that wanted to be standalone. They said only gaining site with their network. Polygon seems to be the healthiest, perhaps Walmart's. I like to talk about seats constantly on desk, a skeleton staff that's trying to fight against its more private entity management. And this is also another problem that I think a lot of these gaming journalists make, is that they try to, it's like there's an elephant in the room, and nobody wants to pretend that it exists. The real reason why people aren't reading these websites and reading these articles is because the articles are pushing agendas, and they're from people that are pushing agendas that don't resonate with what the audience wants or thinks. And it's so diametrically opposed that nobody wants to consume the content at all. That's the big reason. It's a huge fucking factor. Like, to act like that doesn't have anything to do with it is completely fucking dishonest. It is, and I saw Jason Schreier do the same thing today. I'll go ahead and I'll pull it up real quick. It's like I can find this here. Jason Schreier, yeah, here we go. He did like ultra suicide squads. Yeah, it was like Sweet 80, right? So I can find it. It's in here. So, now I mentioned that the little tone turning on fans, forcing immediate ink influence really Jason. The article is not what actually happened. You see, like, and this is a huge problem, right? Is that Jason is, I think, right about this in some ways, but he's not right about this in this one. He's absolutely not. Because the fact is that a lot of people probably didn't. It's because people know because if you look at, for example, suicide bombings, just to look at any YouTube video, I don't know if really look right now, these are it's given on millions of views. And these are all videos talking about one topic, and then you think that doesn't have anything to do with what happened to the game being unsuccessful. Only upset weirdos care about openness. Okay, well, there's no sense. Like, I don't know what people say. But if you don't, and this is the problem, it's not about what you think. Like, this is the problem with journalism. And even people on the internet, you know, it's not about what you think. It's not about how you think people should listen. It's about how they do that. And if you look at the world through the lens of the way that you want it to be, you're intentionally lying to yourself. You're lying to everyone. And that's the reason why I find it to be so funny. It's because it's a fucking lie. What's game journalism on its bio? I think that's not really, a lot of people have pronounced bio. That's not it. It's a valid point. You made the point to interview multiple people and none mentioned that they thought that was the reason. So, he interviewed, what do you mean? And this is the problem. And I want to go ahead and listen to this. And this is the issue with how journalism works. Because you bring up a great point.
They're hiring
I'm not
the
mad
base
at you.
I'm sure it is. They're going toe-to-toe with a group of activists right now. Lambda mankind. If I were you, I'd stay here. Keep your head
He's
down.
saying that this point that was made is that Jason Schreier interviewed a lot of people in the company, and none of them brought this up. Do you know why? Because if they had brought it up, they would have been fucking fired. It's like, for example, like, imagine interviewing a bunch of bowling people and be like, why do you think the stock is going down? Why do you guys think that, you know, people don't trust your products as much anymore? What do you think they would say? I guarantee you I know what they would say. We all know what they wouldn't say. And you know why? It's because they don't want people to think this. And I'm not going to bring that up as a reason, because if they did, they'd be putting their entire job at risk, because they would be going against the narrative of what all of these other companies are trying to push. Imagine doing that. You'd be, it's career suicide to say that. So of course, whenever you interview them, and this is, again, selection bias. You should know this. You see my point? You see my point? Just what he said. I see your point. I can't speak for the article, but it is an anonymous interview standard practice to protect others. I think that they could be anonymous, but they also could be not anonymous to the, like, so for example, they're anonymous to the public, but the interviews were decided by the people that ran the company. And also, it could also be very simply that the people at the company don't want to talk about that on a personal level, right? Like, they believe that messaging, and they want to keep pushing that, so they don't want to acknowledge that this was a massive elephant that nobody's talking about. And you guys see kind of why I'm bringing up this example along with this other example. Because there's this huge problem. And everybody, all of these developers and these journalists want to pretend like it's not there. Well, if it's not there, then why are the graphs going like this? Then why is everybody talking about it? How is it that this thing that's not real is somehow the main topic of conversation in every other form of media except your own? It's the emperor's new clothes. The dishonesty is crazy, and that's why people don't trust them. Do you actually think it's a lot of people, and not just the internet, but the minority, and small people never come in contact with this genuine question? If normal people are not coming in contact with it, that doesn't necessarily mean normal people are not reading video game journalism. Number one. Number two, I don't think that people really make a decision based off of this, but if somebody gets a bad vibe for the game, then they're going to choose it. I think that, yes, obviously, there is like a large swath of people that are not consuming any of this content, just making decisions independently. You're definitely right. And there are people that are kind of like,
Put it
down.
down.
They just get mad at things recreationally and then move on. It's like there's internet, hate mob stuff. But the fact is that these things are being represented in crowds as well, right? I feel like there would be the crowds if it was all just an internet.
I'm sure it is. They're going toe-to-toe with a group of activists right now. Lambda Mankind.
We got company in this space covering the massive industry that make it harder for smaller sites to compete. But even there are problems. Washington Post recently called almost its entire gaming vertical.
They're hiring in the pay's pretty good. I'm sure it is. They're going toe-to-toe with a group of activists right now. Lambda Mankind. If I were you, I'd stay here. Keep your head down.
Articles aren't making any money. Like, why are we talking about how this is like a bad thing? Oh, the Washington Post got rid of all these people. Do you know why they got rid of all those people? It's because those people weren't making them any money and the articles were writing about it. That's the reason why. I think this issue is unique to gaming. It isn't, but because gaming is much more consolidated than something really large in politics, it's easier to identify the issues. Create Fandom, when they were purchased by Fandom, I threw Metacritic out the window because I viewed it as compromised. It's now owned by a company that owns video game publications and journalists, and this is maybe another thing. Everything is compromised. Everything is in some gifts. You shouldn't believe anything until you verify it, even if it's something you agree with, especially if it's something you agree with. It doesn't matter any of this stuff. Always, always, always be skeptical about everything. And view games, and then they get to control and curate what those scores are, what scores they include, what scores they don't, how those scores are tallied, and everything like that. And they get to jump into they want to get us to buy whatever they want us to buy. And I don't appreciate that. That's not something that I want. Sure, I pretty much only use Open Critic from time to time. Steam reviews. This is even about me, of course. I'm absolutely like I have my own biases, my own opinions, and my own thoughts and everything, and I've had my own experiences that can differ from other people's, and because of that, I'm going to give a take that sometimes other people won't resonate with, and they might not agree with. So everything that even I say, you should definitely take a second and be like, is this actually true? Ask yourself a question like, dude, is this really true? You should just listen to what I'm saying and be like, oh yeah, I agree, right? You should think about it and think, do you really agree? Trust and verify, yes. Or the eye test and watch somebody else play it to see if it's something that I'm going to like play. And that sucks because that means that there's less places for us to be able to get more information for us to make educated purchases. And obviously, if you guys are functioning by being fast, that's something that I'm a big fan of. And one of the other things that Paul brings up, he's talking about these bigger gaming sites, or these bigger publications in general. He's talking about, the New York Times, or Forbes. Yeah, these are not gaming websites. By the way, Steam reviews are getting, or so you're like some fucking loser addict that's put 378 hours on the game and rates it as a bad game. And like he rated it as a bad game 200 hours into the playthrough. And so he's put 170 more hours into the playthrough after he said it was a bad game, he wouldn't recommend it. That's what I want to hear from him. Because he knows what he's talking about. This guy's a fucking professional. And what's really funny is for Paul's article specifically is anytime there's any big, huge gaming news, their website is almost always on top specifically because Forbes is a high-traffic site to begin with. It's a respected site. It's been around for many, many years. It's used for all kinds of different things. I would agree with that. I think that Forbes is probably one of the more respected websites even now. Like in spectrum, right? A lot of people don't respect any journalism. Like inside the street, not respecting any journalism, people don't respect Forbes the least. You know, if that makes sense. Dutch, it's going to be ranked higher in any search result. Yeah. And what sucks about that is that when you start putting more and more of these publications, more of these higher end publications at the very top, then that means the smaller guys don't really have much of a voice. They end up dying as a result. And then now you're left with just a few opinions. And as these because now there's less voices and less types of opinions. And no, I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason is because, basically, so there's an ecosystem that these reviews exist in. And in order to understand why reviews are the way they are, you have to understand what the ecosystem really is. So way the ecosystem works is that reviews are written, and then ads are placed on the reviews that then drive traffic to the website. So if the advertisements are not there, then the website doesn't make any money. And then if the website doesn't make any money, the reviews stop existing. So what ends up happening is that if somebody puts out a review and it's something that goes against what is traditional gaming journalism, like messaging, everybody goes out of their mind and they try to get these people deplatformed. I think a great example of this is me. Look about I feel like what I say on my channel, I think that I'm like one of the only people that's talking sense. Very few people, I think, are trying to look at things critically and objectively. And obviously, right? Again, maybe I'm being delusional, right? This is my own delusions of grandeur, right? And so I believe that I'm looking at things in the most objective way that I possibly can, right? I really, really try to do that. And I also don't think that I'm really a bad actor. But if you read what people say about me on Twitter, you think that I've already killed probably at least 3 kittens today, minimum, right? Probably more. I need one of them. And so, if you read this stuff, you think I'm a person.
You're not running the most attractive operation.
Because I made it to people. I mean, there's no it's because I said something right last time. I caused big YouTuber. I didn't like a video game, or just always something stupid, right? And what happens is that these websites get like these people who create narratives, these bad narratives about them, and then it destroys their reputation, and then the advertisers hate it. Because the advertisers don't want to be sponsored, like, they're not really making a lot of money out of this anyway, right? Because these websites are making a lot of money. So it's not worth the brand risk for them to associate with somebody that everybody says hates cake, or they hate women, or something like that. So, like, for example, if a small website writes an article about how the sexualization in stellar bullying is actually good, and then every other person writes an article about how that person is sexist, that website is sexist, and then that website loses monetization there because the advertisers were bullied into leaving, well, then guess what happens? The same exact thing. So whenever video game journalists are complaining about the fact that there's only one message and journalism is becoming more consolidated, the reason for that is because of your own actions. It's because you're creating narratives that don't exist. You're saying things that aren't true. You're drawing correlations that aren't there.
I made it to the delivery.
Yes, whenever you take all of these other people, like all of these racist or sexist, right? No, they're not. What are you talking about? You did this to yourself. Yes, you did. No. And so this is the exact result. It's because whenever you go after, and they do this with a sense of moral authority, they do it as in, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I'm fighting the good fight. I'm on the right side of history. Everybody who's been fucking fighting at any time, everybody thinks they're on the right side of history. That's the stupidest argument you can ever think of. All are smart. Yeah, they're shunning your audience. Exactly. Attack the character, not the argument. And it works. That's why they do it. They think they're morally superior. And so that's why you don't see any of these small websites. It's because whenever these smaller websites and the smaller people, they go and I step online and I say something that like people in journalism dislike. Everybody's writing it. I'm so bad. Sexist, racist, everything, right? And it's like as soon as you're on, you're wrong. And it's like, yeah, exactly. And so, if you do this against a smaller website, it's going to massively damage the website's credibility. It's going to really hurt that website in a big way.
I made it to the delivery bay.
And so that's why it's
Get a command post next to the gate. You should be able to...
Well, that's everything nowadays. There's no line. It's just opinion. Matter respecting other people's opinions. No, it doesn't matter. Isn't it just a vocal minority who cares about what they say? Well, the advertisers do. Which is why at the beginning of this conversation, I wanted to create a framework of how they exist in the ecosystem and how websites have to have opinions that are congruent with what advertisers are okay with. Because if they don't have that, then other websites and other people bully the advertisers into leaving, which forces the website into changing. It's an ecosystem that they exist in, and I'm explaining the cause and effect of the different factors inside the ecosystem. These companies, and you're only getting, as an example of yours, you're only getting one or two guys' opinion And this was sounding the exact same. It's the example of another publication that really only has one guy. Again, now you only have one voice in that entire publication. It's always not one. This doesn't bother you in any way. You got articles about
I made it to the delivery bay.
who cares?
Good. See that
I
command
can't
post?
like it's the real speech.
You should be able to open things
They
up.
can write whatever they're there. Now, obviously, if it's some kind of defamation or something like that, but overall, no. I say negative things about them too. That's the game. I'm fine with it. It's okay. See whatever they want. Then you get a bit of an echo chamber across all of these companies, especially as they consolidate. It sucks. That's not good in general because now we don't have access to a variety of opinions we once had for us to be able to. We never did. We never did. And I encourage anyone who doesn't believe what I'm saying to look it up for themselves. Don't take my word for it. Do not take my word. Don't listen to me. I want you to look up the different opinions that people have on a Resident Evil 5 remake, on Stellar Blade, and on Hogwarts Legacy. Look those up and then tell me if we're not already in this place and we haven't been here for years. Discern and come up with opinions of our own and make educated opinions as a result of that. If you look at any of your favorite YouTubers or Twitch streamers or whatever, one of the reasons why we have the ability to be able to come up with the opinions that we have is because we go through and read a bunch of these articles. We watch a bunch of videos. We try to get as many different opinions as possible as far to, well, and that's again, like, I like him bringing this up because this is a great point because it goes back to a very functional people want to have different opinions, even if they disagree. Like,
Or graphs. Read the fucking graph.
And there are also console fanboys who are constantly ripping outlets for allegedly favoring one.
That's a fucking fact. That he's right about that. 100% right. Oh my god, bro. Oh yeah, that there it is.
Piece of hardware over another,
Mhm.
or lambasting them for inconsistent opinions across dozens of writers who have diverse viewpoints.
Paul's right about this too, by the way. He's completely right. All the time I'll see a website where it's like, which one is it, Kotaku? Which one is it, IGN? And it's like 2 articles written by different people.
In short, when you bring up the layoffs and general destruction of the industry, the reaction from gamers is often a disheartening, good, they deserve it. I'm going to need you to pump the brakes there, Paul. See, I like being a...
No. I'll say it. Good, they deserve it. That's exactly what I think. If you misuse your position, if you mischaracterize your audience, if you mislead them intentionally, you will lose your audience and your industry will die. And that's exactly what's happened. It's a fact, and you can prove it. Every single one of you can prove it. Content creators have had the same problem. Yes, you get what you fucking deserve. That's right. They forgot who the bottom line was. They thought they were the bottom line. The customer is the bottom line.
Able to have access to a variety of different opinions. It gives me the opportunity to be able to contrast my perspective with the perspective of hundreds or thousands of other people, and allows me
to act like the opinions and the seemingly like hegemony of like opinions that like gaming journalism have has no impact on people taking it seriously. And this would be immediately disproven by asking a person, do you think that like these people, do you believe in Fox News? Would you believe Fox News? No, I won't. Why? Well, because they have stupid opinions. Exactly. Fucking exactly. So how is it so incomprehensible to imagine that people think the same thing about you? It just, and again, people have self-referential logic. Well, what I think is real and what everybody else thinks is fake, and so everybody else should think what I think, and anybody who's not isn't in reality. That's fine, but there's plenty of people that believe in flat Earth, and they still fucking vote. That's the problem. Main character syndrome, it is.
Down to something that I think is educated and worthwhile.
And I just like the point I'm bringing that up is this is their argumentation immediately consumes itself. It immediately disproves itself as soon as you ask them why they don't believe other sites. Everybody knows this to be true, but people can only create an argument with it inside of a vacuum. The strongest arguments are the ones that can be used across different examples. If you can only make an argument inside of one insular example and it can't be applied to anything else, it's probably a bad argument.
As said, we can't say allegedly activist takes when they are purely activist takes, purely pandering, purely virtue signaling more than anything else. Look at half of the dialogue that was around Stellar Blade.
Oh, yes.
Gate 3 at one point.
Holy fuck.
How about the fact that Polygon...
By the way, nobody wrote an article about how Baldur's Gate 3, the bear sex scene, was promoting bestiality. Nobody wrote an article about how it was promoting degeneracy and it was making our culture worse. Nobody wrote an article about that, did they? Now, I think it's funny, but the fact is that a lot of people didn't. And that is, again, another example of a completely one-sided type of conversation. I didn't buy the game because of it? Well, good for you. I'm proud of you. Like, good job. Pat yourself on the back. Even if it's true, it's not a good argument. Yes. It's cherry picked. And so I just want to make sure, like, this exists whenever games are bad, too. It's completely one-sided.
Out an article talking about how Helldivers 2 was making people fascists. Come on, man. Look, I'm not going to sit here and cry, and I totally understand why people are cheering on the fact that some of these folks are losing their jobs and some of these publications are going out of business.
I am. I think it's good. I think that this is what needs to happen. This has been a reckoning that's needed to happen for a long time. It's been long overdue, and finally it's happening. These are people who have built their careers around misusing a position of power and import and using it to spread an agenda that does not resonate with an audience. It doesn't resonate with what the people truly believe. They also, if you disagree with them, will completely mischaracterize you in unfair ways. And this is what you fucking get. This is it. I'm sorry. I'm a spiteful person in a lot of ways. Whenever something bad happens to somebody that I don't like, it makes me happy. You get what you fucking deserve. Thank God. And not a moment too soon.
Is because they have spent their time actively trying to pander to an audience that probably doesn't even exist, and if it does exist, they're not even interested in their content or in those games in the first place. And then beyond that, they're spending the rest of that time talking down to an audience that put them where they are in the first place.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to cry for them, nor should anybody else, because they're
Thank you. Fuck them. That's right. That's what you get. It's the same as, whenever a content creator, like some streamer starts making a lot of money and he's like, oh, I'm better than my viewers. Get the fuck out of here. Get out of here, pussy. Oh, now everybody's being mean to me. Yeah, because you're a fucking asshole. What are you doing?
What they deserve for doing bad business. They compromised their own integrity. They compromised their own work because I have to look through 7 or 8 layers of biases to be able to see what a rude opinion is anytime I'm reading any of those articles. Half of it is just there for engagement purposes, clickbaiting, and rage baiting more than anything else. Fuck them. Paul concludes the article with,
Man, that's a good way to say it, isn't it? That's a really good way to say it, yeah. That's crazy. How about that? Fuck them.
It's almost all bad news. Many former big names in the space either fled to PR, game development itself, or have fashioned their own independent entities like Kinda Funny Games or the recently formed Aftermath.
They fled to PR. Maybe that's why people stop reading the articles. Says a lot.
Others have realized that you yourself sort of need to be...
Yeah, they already had the experience. Yeah, true.
With a big social media presence. A paywalled newsletter or your own YouTube/Twitch space to draw a consistent audience. This is essentially what I've done for the last 2 years, especially.
No, see, Legendary Drops is a great example of this. So, this guy started making content, maybe a couple of years ago. And, his videos are popular already. A lot of his videos, right? Look at this one, 127K, 200K. These videos are already getting more views than a lot of IGN videos. So why is it that somebody who just randomly started, and also don't be like, oh, because you watch them. I watch IGN too. I watch other places too. It's not, I've reacted to people and then nobody's going to go watch after that because maybe they don't like the video so much. It depends on what it is. So again, it's if you build it, they will come. Make good content and people will watch it. Here's a great example. You know how developers sometimes are like, man, we just had bad timing on our release. Man, it would have been good, but the timing just wasn't right. Elden Ring could have released 10 years ago or 10 years from now. It would have still been an insanely fucking good game. Same with Dark Souls 1. Baldur's Gate 3 could come out 10 years from now, and people would still lose their fucking mind over it. Total fucking copium. Do you remember whenever Enshrouded came out at the exact same time as Palworld? It was like an international fucking world phenomenon, and it still held over 100, 200,000 concurrent players because it was still that good. Of course there are environmental factors, but they're never the deciding factor. It's the same with streamers. Kai's a great example. 10 years ago, Kai would have been extremely popular. People would love them. 10 years from now, if somebody like Kai comes on the scene again, people will still love them. That's the reason. What? Absolutely. Kai's just one example. Disagree with streamers? You disagree with streamers? Oh, I don't at all. I think that a lot of streamers, like, now here's what happens a lot of times is like streamers kind of like, they're really entertaining at the beginning and then like they make enough money, then they get lazy, right? But if you take like a lot of streamers at their best and you place them at any period in time inside of the Twitch ecosystem, and if they came into that, because a lot of people tell themselves, oh, well, you can't get into streaming anymore. It's too populated, right? Or there's, it's too watered down. You're not going to get the exposure. Listen, there's a person who you're going to know their name next year who didn't believe that. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit cope from people that are trying to rationalize their own failure.
Look,
It's hard to see things getting any better. I feel for my colleagues who are enduring this sort of thing essentially
and Jinxie
every
reason. Yeah, and they're
month
great
at this point. And I feel like the recent Google AI push, especially, is a Mad Max dust storm on the horizon.
And this is another example of the one-dimensional journalism. Try to find me some articles about how AI is good for video games and is good for video game companies. And you're not going to see any of them because all of the articles are being written from the perspective of the industry and not from the consumer. That's, again, the problem. Again, and again.
Isn't poised to blow everyone away for good. God help us all. Mm-hmm. What I want you guys to take away from this is that there's a lot of different things that are going on. And there's some of these companies that wholeheartedly deserve to lose their business. There's journalists that are out there that totally deserve to not have a job. But at the exact same time, there's a huge group of guys that are out there and gals that have been working really hard to bring us great information in the best way they possibly can, that have been making quality content for years. And without them, we wouldn't have access to the things that we have access to. And if we don't have access to that, then we're not making educated purchases. We don't know more about the games that we want to know about. And we play less games as a result of that, or we play worse games as a result of that. And I don't think that's what anybody really wants.
You're right.
But at the exact same time, this is something that is totally brought on by many of these companies that are out there because they're the ones that have, they've compromised.
They've destroyed their reputation. And they've destroyed their reputation with their core audience.
Time and time again, they've damaged their own reputation. I don't even know how many times. Looking at websites like Kotaku or
Kotaku's the worst
Polygon
one. Yeah.
Or even IGN in a lot of cases as well. And, you can't expect the players and the readers to be upset or try to fight for you when you fought against them time and time again. So
that's a great point. Yeah. These websites, and a lot of times, like especially with like Kotaku and Polygon and some of them, they feel like they are directly oppositional to what their customer base and what their consumer base wants. It's directly oppositional.
One of those moments where it sucks to see some of them go away, and I don't like to see the industry continue to collapse upon itself like it is right now. But at the exact same time, like some of it's totally deserved.
But I think you want to try to do your best to, instead of directing it at the entire industry, direct it at the ones that you know are a problem, and then just keep it to that. And don't let it bleed over into anything else, because there's a ton of folks that are out there that I think are well worth keeping around. That's also a really good point he's bringing up, is that it's sad that, like, it's because gaming journalism has such a bad reputation, every single person who is a gaming journalist is, like, celebrated whenever something bad happens to them. This is absolutely true. And it's disappointing that happens. It's great that they're trying to diversify a little bit. They're getting into YouTube content creation, or they're streaming, or whatever it might be. And that's great. And also, like, here's another, like, meta level thing, is that the consumer doesn't really care about, like, the problems that you have with your job, or, like, why those problems exist, or anything like that. Like, and I think this is especially true with, like, entertainment and journalism. Things that, you know, for example, like, a lot of work goes into streaming, but that work isn't respected by the audience. Like, if I say that, people are going to say cap. Now, if you know, you ask a streamer, like, they'll probably think that for sure. But, like, it doesn't really matter to the audience because people don't perceive that. And the way that people perceive things is more important than what actually exists, because the way people's perception is informs their reality. So what happens is that people start trying to, it's like you want to be seen. You want people to, like, see your perspective, and, oh, I want people to, like, sympathize with me and, like, see what my problems are. Like, for example, whenever I couldn't play video, you know, like, music on my stream anymore, like I have a whole playlist here, and I listen to music all the time, but I can't play any of this music because it's like the DMCA. Like, I can't expect the audience to feel bad for me for that, because that's not their problem. Why the fuck would they care? Yeah, it might be bullshit, yeah, but, like, I can't really, like, if the content is worse, don't expect people to martyr themselves and enjoy your worst content because they feel sorry for you. You see kind of like what I'm saying here? We care? Well, yeah, you guys do care, but to the extent that you care, I get you guys care, and I appreciate that. It's great. But the difference is that if the content is really bad, like, for example, if I am, like, not feeling good, let's say in an imaginary world, I actually get sick, okay? I get genuinely sick, and I'm not able to talk on my stream, and I'm just playing video games silently. There would be less people that would watch that stream. That's just the way it is, right? That would be it. And so, is it my right to get mad at the audience for that? No, because you forget what your role is. People forget what their role is, and they get parasocial. The same way viewers, you're lying to us. No, you didn't actually do it. You feel that. Is that the way you really feel? Oh, no, he's just doing this for money. Oh, it's not the same as it used to be. If I'm not going to go any farther. If I do, I get banned. Anyway, streamers and content creators do the same thing. They just do it and this is the example of it. Being parasocial is a two-way street. But also at the same time, keep in mind that means that these bigger publications are going to be doing the exact same thing. IGN's a really good example of this. You have an IGN right now, I think I just looked yesterday, they post, like, it's a lot, that's one of the ratings out, a lot.